So, Captain, one of the things that makes the Army different than probably, or any of the services different, is its policy on drug testing, right? It is unlawful in the military to consume any type of illegal drug. Most of the statutes in the civilian world don't talk about use. They talk about possession, they talk about distribution, they talk about those type of offenses, but not use. In the military, use is against the rules.
And it's not just against the rules, it's against the law.
Right.
There are many employers in the United States that may fire you if you come up as positive for a particular substance. But in the military, you can also leave with a federal conviction. It's not just a firing action.
Right. And even if it's lawful in the state in which you live, if you use a controlled substance, marijuana, through an edible or anything, it's going to be a federal conviction.
That's exactly right. And then even beyond that, some things such as THC-8, which was made legal, most commonly known as CBD, was made legal in a farm bill several years ago nationwide and at the federal level. It's still prohibited, at least in the Army, under Article 92 for violation of a general order.
Yeah, and that's where most of those kind of designer drugs that are staying ahead of the schedule by changing one of the small ingredients or compounds, that's how you get them on the article in the violation of the lawful regulation.
That's exactly right. And a lot of soldiers just seem to not understand that. They don't seem to understand that they can go to a vape shop out in town and literally buy something over the counter that can cause later down the road a federal conviction, the end of their military career from a drug analysis.
Right. And like I said, use, distribution, and possession, those are the things in the military. Now, what the government has to prove on those cases is first that the substance was in fact one of the prohibited items, that they're scheduled or it's in the regulation, and two, that there's knowing use, possession, or distribution. And that knowing element is usually where the soldiers like to come in and say, I didn't know, I ate a brownie, I ate a gummy, I hit a vape, I didn't know what it was, and therefore I didn't knowingly use that substance.
I've seen a lot of cases like that in my career where soldiers will put that in their rebuttal, that they were at a party, like you said, they hit a vape, they drank something that maybe was tainted with some sort of substance. I could tell you in my experience, having seen the reaction of commanders, those arguments don't often resonate in the military. Like so many things, the commanders, when they're making these decisions about law and policy, they're much more interested in decision-making, judgment, and accountability than they are technicalities in the law. So something that may be successful in a courtroom is very rarely successful in the room with a general officer, brigade commander, battalion commander, or company commander.
I absolutely agree. And if you're talking about something other than marijuana, there's really very few instances where you're going to innocently ingest it, right? There's more of a likelihood of an innocent ingestion of marijuana, basically because of the edibles and the legality of it, and even the CBDs, right? You can unknowingly ingest some of that stuff and test positive. But the key there is going to be the nanograms on the report, right? If you're hitting for THC, if you're hitting 1,000 nanograms and the cutoff's 15, no, was not unknowing, was not something that was done accidental, because you will have felt the effects. And if you feel the effects, you need to immediately report it.
100%. But if you do feel the effects, if you think that you've unknowingly ingested something, what you need to do is report it to your command. You need to report it to medical authorities. You need to go to SUDC or whatever your services program is for substance use so that you can get into treatment, and you will be treated much better down the line having knowingly reported that potential innocent ingestion.
Right. And as we talked about on our alcohol video, right? It's how you respond to doing something wrong, right? there can be many mitigating or extenuating reasons why somebody might use a controlled substance. Let's say marijuana. They could be going through a divorce, their kids could be sick, they could have lost a loved one, they could be at the wrong environment where there's people that's doing it and you make a bad decision. Hell, you can be drunk and then you do something because your judgment's off, right? Recognizing those circumstances and taking ownership of the problem is the best way for you to try to stay in the military. It's not a guarantee, but coming in and laying out a thick excuse and making legal mumbo jumbo arguments, that's not going to do well for you at the end of the day.
That's exactly right. It just doesn't, those technicalities do not resonate with commanders in my experience. What resonates with them are exactly what you described. Two primary words. You've got context and you've got contrition. So on the one hand, not making excuses, but just so you understand the level of culpability here, here's the context in which this happened. And then on the other end of it, probably even more important, is that contrition. That I'm sorry, I made a bad call. I've learned from it, suffered consequences, but it should not mean the end of my career. And here's why.
Right. Now, if these charges make their way on a charge sheet, and I'll tell you, in my 31 years, I guess 26 years in the military, I have never seen a single specification wrongful use case that went to a court-martial. They're usually always an additional charge for something else. Now, the way we approach that as defense lawyers is much different than the way we would approach it at a GOMA.
Exactly right. Yeah, you don't want to risk that federal conviction. And so in that venue, when you're entering the courtroom, that's when it's time to take off your contrition hat, to take off your context hat, and put on your litigator hat. That's when you're going in hard, you're going in minute, you're pulling out those individual details, and you're attacking the underlying basis for the charge.
Right. I mean, that's when we get the records from the machine that they use to test. That's when we do the training for the testers. That's when we do the UPL's training. I mean, that's where we spend a day questioning how they even got the positive urinalysis, right? And let me just tell you, that's not something most trial counsel are adept at defending.
Exactly right. They often are not prepared for that intense and minute analysis that's going to come their way from our office. I can tell you personally, on the government side of some of these cases, I have certainly seen multiple times where the testers got it wrong. Sometimes before it even hits the command and starts rolling consequences, but nobody in the Army is really aware of that outside of the trial counsel and the testers themselves. But that certainly does happen. It is not an infallible system, and we are prepared to hold it accountable to the standard that it needs to be before consequences are sought.
Right. And the problem is having the maturity as an advocate to know what your audience is, right? If I'm in a court-martial, it's a lot different if I'm trying to convince brigade or division commander to keep my soldier in the United States Army. And being able to adjust, that's what's most important. Because, General Smith, Colonel Jones, they are not going to care when that last time the gas chromatography machine was calibrated.
That's absolutely true. And that's why it's so important to hire a counsel for these issues that has been in the room for those discussions, that's seen the way these commanders think at all levels, know what they're looking for, and understand all the context behind the action that you're defending against.
Right. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, look, if the drug use itself is a reflection of a larger problem, somebody who has PTSD or who has, traumatic brain injury or some other mental health issue where they're self-treating, right? Or they've got a substance abuse disorder, it's real important to seek counsel to get good guidance on how to deal with that underlying problem. Because if you don't, this is only going to be one of many problems in the future.
Absolutely.
Look, if you're facing drug charges, whether it's a GOMA or a court-martial, we are your warrior advocates here at the Law Office of William Helixon. You defend the nation. We defend you.